Just a mile from the famous Mavericks of California sits one of California's most famous haunted restaurants, the Moss Beach Distillery. Known to be haunted by the apparition of a lady in blue. The Moss Beach Distillery is located in California's San Francisco Peninsula area near the coastline. It sits right on the edge of a cliff overlooking a beautiful beach. It is also a popular seafood restaurant and a designated California point of historical interest. So you know what that means, you guys. If it has a bronze plaque, that means it is here to stay. The story of the Blue Lady became popular around the 1990s. However, the story of the overall building and its history started decades earlier, around the 1930s and 1940s, during the American Prohibition era. In my opinion, the building's history is a lot more interesting than the overall ghost story. However, the ghost does add a little spice to the overall tale. Now let's go all the way back to 1917, when the U.S. Congress decided to pass the 18th Amendment, which illegalized the manufacturing, the transportation, as well as the selling of alcohol. This was Congress's noble experiment in hopes to reduce crime and corruption, solve social problems, as well as reduce the tax burdens created by prisons and poorhouses, and to improve the health and hygiene of the American people. The law came into effect in 1920 and lasted until 1933. And needless to say, you guys, this experiment was a complete failure. Because if we rewind it even further back in time, alcohol has been part of human society for thousands of years, ever since we learned how fermentation worked. So let's go all the way back to 7,000 to 6,600 BCE in a little Neolithic village known as Jiahu in the Yellow River Valley in North China's Henan province. So archaeologists have found residues of a beverage mixture of rice, honey, and hawthorn fruit or grapes from pottery found in this province. That is over 9,000 years of alcohol consumption in human society. And Congress thought they could just pass a law and all would be well. Let's just say that the 18th Amendment created more crime. When there is scarcity, there is always a profit to be made. And many took that opportunity to make a quick buck either from manufacturing, transporting, or selling of alcohol, exactly what the law says it is illegal to do. So during this period, places that sell alcohol are known as speakeasies, and the Moss Beach Distillery happens to be one of the most famous and successful speakeasies in the California coastline. So the building was built in 1927 by a man named Frank Torres, and he decided to name this business Frank's. And Frank's became a popular night spot for the famous and politicians of the big city, San Francisco. And with such high and powerful connections, Frank's was able to operate freely and avoided raids by law enforcement. So knowing the right people means that you can get away with a lot of stuff. When the Prohibition law ended in 1933, Frank's simply just transitioned into a restaurant and remained successful to this day. Today, it is known as the Moss Beach Distillery. It is a very popular seafood restaurant with a spectacular view of the ocean. Now let's get down to the ghost story. There's actually 3 different versions of who the Lady in Blue is. However, all 3 stories ended up with some form of tragedy. So let's start with story number 1. This version happens to be the most popular, and it happens to be my favorite, mainly because it is during the flapper era, and I absolutely love the fashion during the flapper days. So once upon a time, during the Prohibition era, there was this beautiful young lady dressed in a blue flapper dress. Her husband was a bootlegger, which is why they were both in the area. The beach by Frank's was a popular place to transport illegal alcohol. The high cliffs just made it really easy to sneak onto the beach and allowed plenty of time for bootleggers to escape if needed so. One night, the young lady met the speakeasy's dashing pianist, Charlie, and they both instantly fell in love. The good old love at first sight story. As their love affair grew, she started to visit the speakeasy more frequently. And her husband must have caught wind of what was going on because one day he paid a visit to the speakeasy. And while he was there, the couple happened to be at the beach taking a midnight stroll. And he must have found them because the next morning they found her dead on the beach, stabbed multiple times. And the pianist was found unconscious a few feet away from her. But he was still alive. However, there is another version to this story as well, where Charlie also had a tragic ending of his own. So the story goes that days after his lover had passed, heartbroken, he decided to end his own life by throwing himself over the cliff. His body was found the very next day, washed up on the beach. Now on to ghost story version number 2. So this version is very similar to the first one, where it has something to do with a love triangle. However, it's less evil because there's no killing in it. So once upon a time, there was a young lady named Alma Reed and a famous Mexican musician named Ricardo Palmerin. And when they first met, they instantly fell in love. Unfortunately for Alma Reed, she was already married. So this love was forbidden. Now, back in the day, love affairs were very frowned upon, especially if it was the woman that was the adulterer. And also back in the 1930s, they took their vows very, very seriously. So if it's death do us part, it's death do us part. So don't judge Alma too harshly of what she does next, because remember, for her, it is the end of the world. She cannot be with her one true love. So one day, grief-stricken, she decided to walk out to the ocean, and she was never seen again. So you can kind of guess what happened next. Now, this story didn't happen at the Moss Beach area site like the first version. This one happened a few miles away, but there is a lot of people that believe that the blue lady is Alma Reed. Now, let's get to the final version. Now, this version came from the one and only psychic, Sylvia Browne herself. Sylvia Browne was asked to come visit the Moss Beach Distillery by the owners at that time. So, in 1992, she did, and she held a seance. She claimed that the ghost was a woman named Mary Ellen Marley, and she was crushed to death. So, out of curiosity, a couple workers from the restaurant that was at the seance decided to do their own research. They went to the San Mateo Vital Statistics and searched through the archives between the years of 1910 and 1930. And lo and behold, they found a woman named Mary Ellen Marley, who died in a car accident about 15 miles from the restaurant. Now, of course, Sylvia Browne herself could have done her research before she came to the restaurant, or we can also say that Sylvia Browne is the real thing herself. However, the one thing that blew my mind was, I don't know if it's a coincidence. A lot of people say there are no coincidences, but what the workers also found is that Mary Ellen Marley's maiden name was actually Reed, R-E-E-D. Does that sound familiar? And then she also has a sister named Alma Reed, the lady in the previous version I just talked about. So, coincidence? Maybe. At the end of the day, these are all just stories. There are very little evidence to back them up. That being said, you can always go and do your own investigation over at the Moss Beach Distillery. I don't know how hard it is to go and get permission to go do an actual investigation there at night, but in 2009 the people from Ghost Hunters were able to do an episode there, and what they found was actually a little bit tragic in my opinion, because it wasn't anything to do with Ghost Hunters themselves. It's what the owners did to the restaurants. Apparently the owners at that time, I don't know if it's still the same people or not, but they got really into the whole ghost lore, and they decided to add their own a little spice into their restaurant. So what Ghost Hunters found was that they actually had this elaborate mechanical system where the chandelier would move on its own. Also, the lights would turn on and off by themselves through a timing system. they also had a hologram to create this vision of a lady in blue. So in my opinion, that was a little disappointing that they added so much to it when the story itself could have stood alone by itself. You know, it was a good ghost story. Why destroy the lore? So I did happen to pay a visit to the Moss Beach Distillery, not during nighttime though. I went during lunch hour. So maybe that's why I didn't experience anything. I even went to the bathroom where it's one of the locations that the ghosts would hang out at. So I am in the restroom right now. There's even a picture of the distillery behind me. And yeah, let's see if I hear anything weird or not. We'll see. Didn't see a thing. It was a really nice bathroom though. Very fancy. But there is one thing that I did experience there, you guys. And it was the food. The food was amazing. If there's anything that I can recommend besides coming just to check out the place, is to eat the food. The food is amazing. To this day, I'm still craving what I had. So what I had was like this bowl of steamed mussels or clams in this buttery garlicky sauce, and it's paired with this amazing toasted butter pesto toast. It's amazing, you guys. It was so delicious. They also have another dish on the menu that I've been dying to try. It's called Chiopino, and it is a dish invented in California back in the late 1800s by an Italian immigrant family. And the dish is nicknamed the fisherman's stew because it just has a mixed match of all things from the sea. So you have fish in there, scallops, crab, mussels, clams, all mixed in this beautiful tomato-based wine sauce. That is definitely on my bucket list. Whether you are a believer or a skeptic, whether you believe in ghosts or not, the Moss Beach Distillery is still worth a visit, just for its beautiful scenery. Also, if you are a history buff, this place has history. The Blue Lady story is just the cherry on top. I also recommend you walking around the area. It is absolutely beautiful. If you've never seen the California cliffside coastline before, it is just stunning, you guys. All the color, the smells, the freshness. It's just a beautiful place to take a walk. It was a really, really great day. Good scenery, good food, and a good ghost story. So that's it. Thank you so much for listening to this story, and I hope you enjoyed it. I hope this video came out great too. I know that the mic isn't working as well as I hope. I've never used a mic before. It took over an hour to understand and how it's set up. It just wouldn't connect to the camera. And then when I play it back, the sound doesn't sound very good. I'm hoping in time I will learn how to like set everything up, but I hope you guys don't mind the imperfections in this video. I'm hoping that with each video I just get better and better. But that is it for today's story. I hope you enjoyed it, and thank you guys so much for listening.